When I first heard Samson talk about the Omega candle and going to 1 million, I was like, yeah, maybe the next cycle. But now I'm seeing all these data points. I'm going, that doesn't seem too far-fetched. There's definitely a few different outcomes that could get us to 1 million like real fast.
Think about the strategic Bitcoin reserve. They have such an opportunity here to recapitalize America's balance sheet. That thing will get politicized down the road one day where there'll be a future politician who'll be like, wow, we have all these Bitcoin reserves. We have 40 trillion in Bitcoin reserves. Like maybe someone like AOC is like, why don't we liquidate that so we can pay for free housing for everyone?
I think that is literally like Bitcoin's time to shine, to show the world that it is a safe haven asset.
Like no one builds wealth through diversification. And literally when you boil it down, you're like, okay, like I'm gonna get more involved in things I know less about. Like every bet you get from your main bet is a deviation from how much you know about the main thing. The real irony and the laugh is gonna be when Microstrategy buys Microsoft.
Oh my God.
At the end of this cycle.
Right.
Because Microstrategy is like, yeah, we could use a little software business.
Yeah.
What is real? How do you define real?
You can't jump into cash. Cash is trash. What do? You get out.
My guest today, Cedric Youngelman. If you don't know him, he runs the Bitcoin Matrix podcast, and he gets to talk to lots of people in this space. He's been doing it for a number of years, and so he's got a lot of things on his mind, and I've enjoyed getting to know Cedric over the last couple of years because he always opens my eyes to new potential outcomes. I like to think of you, dude, as like the guy on the wall, right? Like if I'm the guy in the basement putting all the strings and pinning them up to the pictures, and then you come down to the basement with me and you're like, oh, Paul, you got it all wrong. And you just start moving the strings around and you reconnect everything for me. And then I'm like, I've never thought of it that way, but I could see the potential of what he's saying. That's like my entire relationship with you. And I think you have that impact on a lot of people because you think way outside the box in a positive way, because it's always good to hold multiple potential outcomes, right? So I appreciate that in you, and I'm glad you're here with me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to be here, especially with you. We've become friends over the last, 2 years now.
Yeah, probably.
It's great to be here at Byte Federal.
Thank you.
You guys are doing awesome things, and the space is really cool. I do like to be the fly on the wall, not just the guy at the wall maybe, but like hearing what's going on
Right.
and kind of tapping in. Speaking maybe like the guy at the wall, sometimes maybe I do like to think outside the box and contrarian, not just like to be contrarian, but to kind of float what could happen.
Yeah.
And I could kind of have strong opinions that I could hold loosely and move on.
Right.
But, I was kind of having one of those moments where I thought I was having a lot of real thoughts and it was getting crazy. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, wow, it's like a beautiful mind in here. Like it's crazy. And she's like, you haven't seen the movie. And I'm like, I know, but like you gotta picture it. Like I'm at the wall and this is going on and that's going on. And she's like, that's nothing like the movie. And I'm sure it's nothing like that in your mind. And it's not, But it's fun to kind of get into that stuff. And it's kind of interesting to try to tap into what's going on in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
And see what's going on and figure it out and try to maybe prepare yourself, or especially mentally these days. Or
that's a great place to start. I was literally doing that this morning, thinking about all the change, geopolitical, financial, fiscal and monetary policy, presidential, administration elections, wars. There's so much shit changing rapidly that and Trump's about to step into that. To me, it's going to be an absolutely chaotic first 6 months to maybe a year. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of weird things are getting normalized, like just this United Healthcare CEO.
Yeah.
I mean, murdered on the streets of New York, and it takes 5 days to find the guy, and they find him in McDonald's. And the whole thing's kind of weird, but forget about the particular incident. It's normalizing sort of vengeance and violence against people, CEOs or, the elite, whatever you want to call it. Political assassinations, economic assassinations are getting normalized. And so that's kind of scary. That's like fourth turning stuff.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know if you've noticed it. Maybe it's just my feed, but the last month on X, the amount of violence I'm seeing, like just watching on X, maybe it's because I'm so in shock and I'm actually watching it that they're feeding me more of it, but it's...
Well, it got really bad for me about 6 months ago, where it was a lot of pure sort of things that were trying to drive racism, I thought. A lot of racial violence, just a lot of violence in general. Somehow for me, my feed, that toned down a bit. But it is strange how there's like a water cooler moment to the feed that probably shouldn't be there, in terms of like we're all looking at maybe some issues the same, at least maybe in our spheres or bubbles. And even like I'll talk about it with my wife, and like we have the same feed.
Really?
Yeah, it's like she'll bring up a tweet, and I'll be like, yeah, no, I just sent you that one.
Yeah.
And
well, I guess that makes sense because it's listening to you talk too.
Sure, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, we should have a lot more variety in our feeds, I feel like.
Okay.
And the issues there shouldn't be as many issues, I feel like, bubble up maybe, or stay there for so long.
Right.
That seems, the algorithm definitely seems like driven towards some goal.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And driving conversations, and maybe it's misinformation or disinformation or just distraction, or maybe there's more to it. And I wonder how many entities are fighting over that algorithm. Like, or, trying to, game it for those purposes outside of Twitter.
Yes.
And have moles in Twitter and stuff. I mean, I don't know how far it goes.
I don't know either.
That's a really important algorithm. That's incredibly undervalued. What is it, like $100 billion company now? We bought it for like $44 billion, right? Which is really nothing.
It feels totally different in there now.
It does. It feels a lot better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that this is going towards like being like the WhatsApp platform, where they're IDing everybody on the platform. Mm-hmm. They're incentivizing the platform for you to be verified.
Yep.
He comes from the PayPal world.
Yep.
So he's going to roll out money on some rails there with some sort of currency.
Yep.
I mean, I think he'd be best if he went with the dollar. And then, obviously Bitcoin would be the best, but like, I think he's not going to do that. And so maybe it's the dollar, or maybe it's Dogecoin, or maybe some coin, Elon coin.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he gets that far, but that's the scary part of it, I think.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. I mean, Trump is, obviously pro Bitcoin, but he's also very pro crypto.
Right. Which could be CBDCs and stable
could be all sorts of
and
things.
Surveillance, and I have no idea.
He could be the guy that just says, make your own money, go for it, do whatever you want to do.
Well, I think there'll be a lot of that. And, in some ways there should be.
Sure.
Like, we had private money in the 1800s. Right. It was successful.
I mean, there's an argument to be made there.
There's more
a
risk,
libertarian perspective of let the market decide, and I can appreciate that.
As long as it's not like rug pulls.
Yeah, exactly.
And outright fraud and scams and predatory behavior, right? And I think that like you even look at some securities like don't have to all be shitcoins. I think in a Bitcoin there'll be a financialized world.
Yes,
there'll be credit, and there'll be equity, and there'll be securities, and there'll be bonds. They'll just be structured differently.
Right. I mean, think about it today. Think about all the financial products that are available today that have a huge treasury component to them.
Sure. Yeah. Of course.
Right.
Right. Because it's your base layer.
So in the future, why would not BTC be a part of so many of these financial products?
Right. And loans would just have to outperform the rate of Bitcoin's natural return.
Right.
But back to like say Trump and Musk, and like I'm not sure. I have an optimistic view. It feels way more optimistic now than it did 6 weeks ago. I kind of feel that the world feels a little different, more orange, bright orange future. I'm still really weary. They still have like several steps to take. I think free Ross day one is, if we don't see that day one, I'm going to start questioning a lot of promises and everything.
Right.
I'm trying not to get too into the details of appointments and who has this position. I just want to see results. And in the economy, like there's the Federal Reserve and everything they do there, but like, do they make Bitcoin legal tender? Do they get rid of capital gains tax on Bitcoin? These are real steps they can take that probably would benefit themselves.
Right.
I'm assuming they're positioning themselves
I mean,
they're
we
incentivized to.
Yeah, we can only guess, right? But I think we've got a really good chance that we're going to see them try all sorts of things. Meaning, we're going into a new monetary paradigm. The United States is going to go there, and it has to go there because of the debt spiral. So with that transition, we're going to see things tried, we're going to see things fail, and we're going to see things retried, fail, retried, etc., until they get something that's working towards their desired goal, which is going to be more dollars in the system, a lower purchasing price of dollars, so a weakening of the currency, and massive economic growth. To me, that all signals, no matter all the steps it takes to get there, that all signals weakening the dollar, purchasing, or at least getting out of the way of purchases of Bitcoin. So as Bitcoin price drives up, it's going to drive the use of stable coins. So just like the issuance of more treasuries drives more dollars in the system, you're going to get the price rising of Bitcoin generating the desire for more stable coins globally, being the primary trading pair, USD and Bitcoin. And so I think, like, however you want to look at all these different things that could transpire in us getting there, that's the desired goal. And how they get there is going to be a rough ride, because there's going to be a lot of fights to get to that point. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that it'll be a rough ride. I mean, it's very optimistic in a great way. Like, struggling with thinking about the strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Mm-hmm.
They have such an opportunity here to recapitalize America's balance sheet.
Right.
I think there's sort of that thing will get politicized down the road one day, where there'll be a future politician who will be like, wow, we have all these Bitcoin reserves. We have 40 trillion in Bitcoin reserves. Like, maybe someone like AOC is like, why don't we liquidate that so we could pay for free housing for everyone, and destroy our reserves and dish out the wealth to the current generation. But I would love to even get that far and have that problem.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we could recapitalize Social Security. I mean, I like this plan Sailor's rolling out, where we just recapitalize America and demolish and demonetize gold and our enemies' ability to economically fight against us.
Yeah.
And put them all behind us. And this is that moment where other countries are obviously watching what we're talking about, and we are talking about that as a nation.
These are all things that are on the table that, as a Bitcoiner for the last, I don't know how many, you've been in a long time, it's hard to fathom that we're here so fast. It's like all these things we've been talking about that were at some point in the future, and they're all right now.
But based on all our conclusions already, we all kind of expected this, and these are grand things to say, and that's a broad generalization. But if you believe in everything divided by 21 million, that means you have to blow through 10,000 a coin. You have to blow through 100,000 a coin.
Right.
You have to blow through 1 million. You have to blow through 10 million. Unless you're just being sort of obnoxious, or if you believe in that math and that true sort of this is a denominator. So all these things aren't, they're shocking that we're going through it, but they're kind of expected.
No, that's what I mean. I didn't mean, that's not shocking that we're going through it. It's shocking that it's all coming right now, to me, at least. Because when you hear about, when I first heard Samson talk about the Omega candle and going to 1 million, I was like, maybe the next cycle. But now I'm seeing all these data points. I'm going, Samson probably knew this before I knew it. And that doesn't seem too far-fetched. There's definitely a few different outcomes that could get us to 1 million real fast.
I think we have to go to 1 million real fast.
That's what I mean.
In a lot of ways, whether it's this cycle or next. There are going to be vicious swings up that I think a lot of people are expecting lower returns going forward or less volatility. And I don't think that's necessarily the case at all.
Well, that
we have such a small sample size behind us.
Yeah. And you have that S curve, right?
You have to go up at one point, straight up.
Straight up.
And if you look at something like even, it's you can look at something like Fidelity's report, where they said that in 2038, it's going to be $1 billion per Bitcoin.
Yeah.
To get there, it's violent and straight up. And, I was talking to a very predominant, you could say, famous Bitcoiner who's one of the most bullish Bitcoiners you could ever meet. And he was like, how bullish you are? And I was like, well, you got this article from Fidelity. And he's like, oh, come on, that's hocus pocus numbers. Like no one could even like, that's just like in a bar wasted numbers. But like, I don't think they're like out of line if you really believe everything divided by 21.
What I don't know I don't know what her title was, but I just saw Fidelity see like a cryptocurrency analyst on CNBC from Fidelity that said this cycle 500 to a million.
Hey Bitcoiners, invest in Bitcoin with confidence. Why do I recommend River? River is the best place to build your Bitcoin wealth, and they offer 0 fee on recurring buys. Proven full reserve custody. Earn 3.8% interest on cash paid in Bitcoin. Put your cash to work and earn Bitcoin. Cash is FDIC insured, no hidden fees or minimums, and withdraw your cash at any time. River makes it simple and secure to save your wealth in Bitcoin. Get $100 when you sign up and buy Bitcoin on River at river.com/matrix. Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's like there could be unforeseen events. Like no one foresee China banning mining for the 9th time.
Yeah. No, I'm sure there's stuff coming.
No one
we're
foreseen
not aware of,
FTX and Celsius and Luna. And so there could be sort of black swans, really weird things. Like, again, I'm not rooting or for or against it, but what if Trump got assassinated and Powell lowered, what would it be? Like he would lower rates? No, raise rates dramatically. Right. And back the currency for the next 10 to 20 years with gold. I mean, like there could be events or just the markets get decimated because of world war. There are bear cases that are, outside of maybe what we expect to happen. But the more we all expect one thing, maybe again, you have to be a little contrarian. It's like something else could happen.
Yeah.
And even if we go up very fast, it's going to happen in a way we can't expect.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the thing about like everyone thinks that bear markets are harder than bull markets, but like it's harder to ride a bull than it is to a bear. Mm-hmm. Like a bear is a less viciously mobile animal. I'm not saying you have a better chance against the bear. I'm just saying like you could ride the back of a bear probably longer than the back of a bull. Yeah. And a bull literally tries to throw you off by going lower. And like the difference with the bull and the bear is like in a bear market, like your losses are capped. It's like options. Like you put in what you put in, and then you can only lose that amount. It's finite. So you could be like, yeah, I'm going to zero. Like I'd only lose like that amount.
Right.
But in a bull market, like your losses when you sell are infinite in terms of what you miss out on upside potentially.
No, I know this cycle is going to be really hard to sell.
This
cycle is going to be really hard to sell.
Well, think about it. If you go from like 200,000 to 750,000 in a very short period of time,
it's going to be brutal.
And what that's going to do to people's sort of their own wealth. Like whatever you are worth at that $200,000 point of a Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So let's say you're lucky you got to 1 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? You're really fortunate. And so now you're worth $200,000 with this 1 Bitcoin. I'm not saying you don't have other things in your life going on. And then it shoots up to 750,000. Now at that point you could sell 200,000. And you know what I mean? You have all the, and then, but you're really facing this thing is like you're worth 750, right? And now maybe you have a wife and kids, you have people dependent on you. And then that thing drops down to 175. Like you're going to look like a schmuck and feel horrible. And maybe still be better off at 175 than you were at $15,000 Bitcoin. But those are psychologically really hard.
Exactly.
And all Bitcoiners who've been around a while have gone through this. But the higher the numbers go, I think the harder those things get to ride maybe in ways that we all don't expect yet.
Well,
and the choices that people have to make.
I've been lucky enough,
or
unlucky, or lucky or unlucky enough, however you want to look at that, to not sell any of it ever. But it is always it's unbelievable the amount of emotional pressure you have at those peaks where you just once you hit like, I remember when we hit 17,000 back in 2017.
December of 2017.
And we were talking about ETFs back then.
Right. Because it was inevitable.
We were like, ETFs going to happen like imminently.
Right.
And we would go to 100K. We were thinking 100K back then.
Gemini was applying. Mm-hmm. There were also somebody say, it was like Chinese New Year was going to Wall Street bonuses.
Right.
I mean, there were a lot of other,
and then futures came out.
Yes, which demolished the market. Ended up cash settled, and there was a way to manipulate.
So, but you could see how like every cycle, when you get into that emotional state, where let's say we get to that 500,000, you're going to be going, oh my God, it's literally like 3 bars and we could be at $1 million. You know, I mean,
Right,
it's
but you
like,
also don't know if so. Back to the whole thing, like you're at 500,000. Are we going to $1 million this cycle or back down to 90K?
right.
And that's gonna be really difficult for a lot of people to ride that bull.
Yeah, exactly.
And the uncertainty of that.
Yeah.
And face the
But did
people
you
that
just-
they're responsible to.
I'm sure you're experiencing this, right? Like I talked to a friend yesterday. I've been talking to him about Bitcoin for a long time.
And I've never sold either, by the way. But
Good for you. And he's asking me about Bitcoin now. Ever since we broke all time,
Sure.
or hit on, it says, hey, I want to talk to you. Let's sit down. And so I was talking to him yesterday, and he's going on like, where do you think it could go? And I just said, well, we're certainly, within the next 4 to 5 years going to be at $1 million a coin. And he just looked at me like, and I go, I know it's hard to believe, but that's, and I don't even want to tell you this, but that's kind of like the start. Like, it's just the start. Like, you just want to buy as much as you can right now and have it be money that you don't worry about for the next 10, 20 years. And he just kind of looked at me like just that mentality of shifting somebody away from, oh, here's a hot stock tip, to this is the new monetary system. This is becoming the pristine collateral of the future financial system. You have to hold this forever. That's how it changes your life. If you sell it, you're going to regret it. Like, the shift in the mindset of that blows people away. And then I literally 30 seconds later, he goes, well, but what do you think about Doge? I was like,
well, unit price. He just at that moment,
Yeah.
he traded against you.
what's that?
He's trading against you.
What do you mean by that?
So he's saying, okay, like, wow, like Bitcoin might still go from 100K to $1 million. I would 10x if that happened to me. That's what he's saying to himself. So he's like, all right, maybe I'm going to put 10 grand in this. You know, and a lot of people, when they don't have any Bitcoin, they
you're right.
can
That's the
only
mental
consider
calculations they're doing.
new money allocation to this thing. Like, how much would I
Sure.
go to the casino and spend on this Bitcoin thing that might 5 or 10x from here? I'm a little too late. I'll never catch Paul. Right. So, and they're not trading with their future self, because they're not saying to themselves, whatever I have, wouldn't it be nice to 5 or 10x that?
Right.
In a very sort of what I see as a risk-free way if you study this asset. But they're saying, no, this is the most riskiest thing I could do. I'm going to put as very little into it as possible. But if I could buy this thing with very low price point that Paul's not in especially,
Yeah.
then not only could I do well, but I might beat Paul, because that's really the whole game at this point.
Right.
What small amount can I put into something else that I don't care about that might beat Paul?
How do we change that
Now,
game?
And the other thing I saw,
that's so screwed up.
The other thing I saw that
defeats
is
the whole purpose.
because they're also like, well, I mean, if this thing is true, then I'm gonna go around sounding like Paul, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in a cult. And I just want 1,000,000x because I'm a nihilist right now. Like, I'm not doing well. Right. And no one, but very few people at that point think like Michael Saylor with like, what can I reallocate to Bitcoin?
Yes.
Right? Like, what do I want to think? Oh, that thing's better. I put in the work, and it's better than the things I have. Because the point you're talking to them, they like the things they have. They're up 10, 20, 30% in fiat terms. It's doing well. They feel like that's great. They would never sell. This is what they're invested in. Their guy told them to buy that. And then the other thing I noticed, you call like the normie land, but I talked to a lot of boomers over Thanksgiving, like a little on the older side of boomers. But for so many people, 100K feels like this natural, organic, limiting barrier. And so like we're at another natural top. The thing is 100K. Like, you've achieved, like, now it's for them, that's not $1 million thing, but it's like a Lamborghini costs $500,000. It's like, it is the thing now.
Right.
And the only way they can go is really up like 10, 12% or down from here. And again, it's like, and it's not pristine collateral. It's not money they could spend. It's not, to them, it's newfangled, something they don't understand. And it's like, why is this thing worth 100K and it's over?
Are you getting the emails and the texts? Congratulations.
I'm getting at the dinner table over Thanksgiving, like, wow, it's up a lot. I never thought it'd be this price.
I've been getting the messages of like, well, congratulations.
It's the same sentiment.
Right.
It's over. Like you made it.
You made it.
It's
You're
the end
over.
of the race.
It's over. Yeah,
like,
yeah. Like you should get out.
You know, like I hope you got to 0.1 coins, and you know, it's go get yourself like some ice cream and a Disney World vacation.
Yeah.
And again, I think the point you made on when you came on my show, which is, I fundamentally believe in it. It goes back to unit of account, but just having a few sats. You don't have to have a lot of Bitcoin to be empowered by that. Right. By what this new paradigm shift is. And that also one day you will be wealthy because of everything divided by 21 million.
100x your life, right?
But you have to have patience.
You got to have patience.
And it might, if you enter the cycle now, I'd say to a lot of people, like it takes like, I think it takes 3 cycles. I think you maybe to retire yourself on Bitcoin if you do it in sort of a frugal way. Like you're just setting aside new money.
A good friend of mine, and I know you know her, I think in 2000, I might have the date wrong, 17 or something like that. She was doing $30 a day,
which is amazing and awesome.
And now it's close to $900,000.
Right.
And I think $87,000 invested, 900,000 roughly when it hit about 100K, and $30 a day.
And what do you think that's? How many years? It says
several years. Yeah, okay. I think it was about 2017.
Okay, do that for the next 8 years now.
Right.
And I think you'll see similar numbers, if not greater.
Yeah.
But at worst, what are you going to see? 10% of that?
Yeah, 500,000.
500,000, right.
Right.
And I think it's really hard for people to see it as a purchasing power increasing machine versus how do I 5x or 9x, and is that going to be enough? And so if you use it as a purchasing power machine, you think of it as more defensively, like whatever I have, I want to convert into that machine.
Right. It's like literally what can you afford to just put away every day and do it and come back 20 years from now because you're just going to be a game changer.
But then the switch flips and you're like, what can I afford not to put into this thing?
It
like,
does
what do
switch.
I have on the sidelines?
After you go through one cycle,
and reallocate. You start to reallocate.
Yes. Once you hit that cycle, you'll be like, I'm not putting enough in. But you got to get started.
Right. So a lot of people doing also. So the people who have no coins that you're talking to, like they're doing that math in their heads, right? So they're like, okay, if I put in 1,000 today,
dude, if I get another,
and we fly this year, then I got to put in $10 a day for the next 5 years to maybe get, and they get disappointed and they get like they're like. And it's demoralizing, and it doesn't sound fast enough in a weird way. Like that's crazy because their plan is to wait another 30 years at their day job.
Yeah.
But so 5 years in Bitcoin is not fast enough, but 30 years at work is going to be great at a job they hate. Yeah. Right. And so they don't put in any effort. You beg them to put in effort, and the guilt rides up. They're like, wow, like I didn't put in the effort when they said, now we're here. It's probably over for me. And they want to go find something else that they could go. And unfortunately, you have things like maybe Microstrategy now, or, you know, if you could talk some sense into them.
Well, I can't believe, dude, if I get one more question about XRP, I'm going to freaking shoot
weird
myself.
That's the big thing right now. Everyone's
the Garling House always ramps up the marketing every cycle.
It's amazing how effective they are.
Oh my God, the proof of marketing is massive.
They're up like 200%, and they're not higher than where they were at their prior peak.
I've been telling everybody, and you should all do this, if you're considering any shitcoin, price it in Bitcoin. Don't price it in dollars. And see how it's tracked against Bitcoin. If you look at XRP, XLM, and Cardano, which is the 3 I just did for somebody, every cycle is a lower peak. Every cycle is a lower peak. And it just keeps driving towards zero. Everything goes to zero against Bitcoin. That's a meme because it's true. And the best thing you could do is just buy the Bitcoin right now because that is where everything's going.
I like what Trace Mayer got me doing, which was track your net worth in dollars, in gold, and Bitcoin. And of course, they should all be trending up.
Sure.
But you'll notice that the Bitcoin
pace
is going the slowest and trending towards the amount of Bitcoin you have in your portfolio. So if you start off with, like 1 Bitcoin, and so Bitcoin's worth 100K and you have 100K in your 401k, after a year, you're going to have like a 500,000 in Bitcoin and 110,000 in your 401k. You'll be up in fiat terms. You'll be up nothing in Bitcoin terms, though, if you didn't add.
Yeah.
And so you're trending towards like your whole portfolio. You could have $1 million in your 401k and 100,000 and you're going to trend towards 100% Bitcoin.
Exactly.
And you'll see that it's going to be harder and harder for you to grow your stack over time.
Yep.
Which I think, I think also kind of demoralizing, I think, for a lot of people coming to Bitcoin now. Again, I think, dollar for dollar, they'd be better off putting any dollar they could into Bitcoin and improving the purchasing power and getting their money out of the system and all things like that. Even a 401k, you might have tax advantages, but they might raise taxes over different regimes and administrations. Your money's trapped in there. You can't utilize it. You can't use it in emergencies. Think about all the things you could self-finance. If you could access all your money, you could self-fund your own health care, your own car insurance, maybe your own, probably just get rid of mortgage insurance bullshit, but like property insurance, can't get property tax, but a lot of things you could self-fund if you had your own money and access to your own money, and probably even just live a better lifestyle if you had access to your money now,
right?
And even redeploy it differently if you could take it out of the system. And then you take so much risk out of your life.
So speaking about one of those financial calculations I hear a lot of people making today is like real estate versus Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right. I have a couple of friends, millennials, that are like just buying their first home and would always ask me like, how do about down payments and things like that. And I would always tell them, I said, if you just compare the compounded growth rate, you'd probably be better to take that down payment and put it in Bitcoin and wait. And then have a bigger down payment to get a better house. And not sell all your Bitcoin or borrow against your Bitcoin to get the bigger house. Whatever you want to do, but the economic calculation between real estate and Bitcoin, that's a hot topic, I think, for millennials because so many of them have been priced out of the housing market for so many years. And it continues to get tougher and tougher with rates rising. So what are your thoughts on that?
My first thought, and I love this topic though, and I think it's very timely. And I think there's two different ways of looking at, just to frame it up, is people who don't have a lot of Bitcoin and are thinking about buying a house, and people who have Bitcoin for a while and maybe thinking about buying a house. And then there's people who are like have a house and thinking about selling their house for Bitcoin.
Let's start with the people that are at zero.
But
They've got
I think first,
no Bitcoin and no house.
I think to kind of give some love maybe to the real estate people, because I think before Bitcoin, a lot of people, and I think about this myself, like I was a securities person, an equities guy before Bitcoin. If I was going to invest, I was interested in stocks from a very young age. And there were some people who were just interested in real estate over stocks. And the differences are, like, I think primarily around sweat equity and leverage.
Yeah.
So if you like leverage, there's more accessible in real estate. You can leverage in stocks, but harder when you have less of a portfolio and starting out. And in real estate, you can put in work, physical work to juice the asset or protect the asset or enhance profitability. So I think a lot of people come into Bitcoin already loving real estate or loving their stocks or, and whatever evolution they have. And I think also around a home is so much about beyond the financial. Unfortunately, homes have been priced beyond their utility value.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's the hardest dilemma. They're overpriced for their utility, but there's an emotional component to housing that is separate from the financing of it. Like for some people, I think, housing represents stability, security. Maybe you have children and you want to position yourself in a certain part of town, whether it's public school or private school or homeschooling. You want to know that you're going to be there for 8 to 10 years. You want to, and you can debate, okay, you can maybe rent in perpetuity in a place, but it's harder to know the landlord's not going to want to move in or kick you out or sell. And you can do more improvements when you're at home. You might not do as well with your money as a renting though. As a renter, I love not doing any of the home repair. I think that should be a whole you have a car mechanic. I love renting, and it's like leasing a car. Like I'll get a new house every 3 years. We'll try to do it in the same area, and I'll let the other people who manage these properties learn how to deal with windows and plumbing and electricity. And I could focus on podcasting and Bitcoin and books and philosophy, and like just special, but there's so much to that. So I think that there are a lot of people now who maybe have been in Bitcoin for a while who are like, when do I maybe provide that for my family, that stability? When you do rent, like maybe you're not going to put reverse osmosis on the entire house.
Right.
Maybe you're not going to improve the the driveway and the look of it, but maybe it'd be nice to have a better looking driveway and spend that money, or better landscaping and pay for it. But you don't when it's not yours.
That's true.
There's different things. Maybe you have a pool and you want a jacuzzi, or whatever it might be, and you don't want to add that because you're renting.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really personal decision. I just did a show with Leon Wankum about Bitcoin versus real estate. I mean, I think economically, I think if you're investing, if you have very little Bitcoin, I think it makes way more sense to stack sats. And like you were saying, to not put a down deposit into home. But I think if you're on the other side of that equation and you're like, when does housing look cheap enough in Bitcoin terms?
Mm-hmm.
When do I, and there's also this like fiat mindset, I think, of like never, like, to some extent, like never, ever selling, never, ever selling your Bitcoin is a little bit fiat.
Yeah.
Right. You're never gonna, it is money. It is savings.
Well, so
it, can be used to enhance your life at some point.
This is where I've struggled with it with these
you
people.
might not live forever like a shark.
When I've talked, we'll get there. We'll get there. Where I've struggled with people is that I think when they hear me say what I'm about to say, they think I've lost my mind. And I tell them, like, don't buy the house. Take your down payment, put it in Bitcoin. And then just set up a DCA and start.
Take a HELOC out.
No,
of
but
the
I mean,
house.
be the guy who doesn't know Bitcoin, right?
Right.
And just they think I'm out of my mind when I tell them this. Put however much you can put in per week and just let it grow. In 4, 5, 10 years, you're going to have enough there that you're going to be able to do a transaction to secure a home that you never thought you could have. And in that meantime, property prices are probably going to be demonetized because Bitcoin is stealing that monetization, and interest rates are going to get lower because you have the Bitcoin. So they're going to look at you as a prime borrower. They're going to give you the best possible rate, and you may not even have to sell your Bitcoin to get the mortgage. That's such a vastly different world than they could have ever imagined. And then they hear that coming from the guy down the street who goes fishing and surfing, and they're like,
that's a lot of killer.
I think I'll buy the house.
Well, a lot of people. I've gone through this conversation with neighbors in my community.
Yeah.
Who some of us moved to Florida in the last 2, 3, 4 years. We're renting to start. Some have gone on. They were chasing the market at its peak almost, it seemed like. But there's a lot. They don't put in the work with Bitcoin. But it's a really emotional factor, I think, housing that's a little bit beyond economics. And I think those things are coming way quicker than everyone realizes. Yeah. But for a lot of people, like, building that bridge to that world, even if you are a Bitcoiner, is not easy. And I think, the other thing around, like, you're the guy who down the street who fishes and all these things, and they might say, like, oh, he drives this car or like that thing. And they don't see it as like, oh, maybe like to save and afford stack.
Yeah, if you look at my car, you have no idea.
Right. But they're also like, they're saying to themselves, like,
I think I can barely survive.
It's not Paul specific, but they're saying, like, neighbor X, my friend Paul Tarantino did not find the new global reserve currency in the world before MSNBC and CNN tell me that. Like, there's no way he found it first.
Right.
And they would want to see more signs, like in like what they think about crypto rich, for you to like. And so like they have to almost go through several cycles with the scoreboard where like you told them an X number, and the first time you told them about Bitcoin, they probably looked at the price and they don't remember the price. So sometimes the price has to go up several orders of magnitude before they even notice the price, and then it goes to several orders of magnitude before you have credibility with them. And that's where they feel
and
too
then they
late.
think it's too late.
And they also think that this thing is not real and that Paul can't be onto this thing that's still going to go up in value.
It's so disappointing because I just want to help people.
Yeah, but most people don't know that most people are not looking to help others because they see every trade in their life as against you or you against them.
That's fiat.
Because that's fiat. So there's no trade that has ever existed where we both can
win.
Right, where we both win, unless your cousin Bobby who cut me in on the deal.
Yeah.
Right? And we cut other people out of the deal.
Right.
Right? And that's how everything has worked. That's also why like anything that goes up a lot in price looks scammy. Yeah. It sounds like if you even bring up, you should buy Bitcoin because it goes up in price. It's like when I hear like people like, I'll get like people be like, oh, I heard you're the Bitcoin guy. You're the Bitcoin boy? You're the Bitcoin guy? Go do orange pill him. do it, orange pill now. And I'll be like, no, man, I'm cool. I just want to like, and then someone else will try to orange pill them in front of me and try to sound like a Bitcoiner. I'm like, it's going to $1 million, bro. And it's going straight to $1 million and you're going to miss out. And it's like, whoa, this is not okay. And like, because like think about it, any other context, if you were like went up to someone and told them how a stock is going to be the best stock in the world, or some checking account got 19.2%, or you could get them in construction bridge loans at 67% over 3 months. I mean, like, these things don't sound real.
And there's always a catch.
Right. And people in the fiat world are doing so much more than their day job. They're spending 30% of their time already trying to recreate money in their portfolio, right? That's all a portfolio is your portfolio manager trying to recreate money and maintain purchasing power in a fiat world. Like, let me get a basket of goods that's going to outperform the dollar by a little bit, not too much because we don't want too much risk. It's got to be stable. It's got to be like money, right? We're trying to create a currency in this thing, and that's
right. They're trying to engineer a store
but that
of
takes
value.
up a lot of time,
and we've already got the best one on the that's ever
Even
existed.
if you have a guy, like, you're sweating those decisions. You're sweating the decisions your guy. And what's also amazing is everyone's guy, down at Fidelity or Charles Schwab, has never made money in their lives for themselves. Right. There's, and I'm not trying to diminish those jobs or whatever, but they studied Keynesian economics in college, and they're handed a playbook by management, and they have very little money of their own in the market because they're, if they've made any real money in the market, they're not managing your money. Right. It's a much more exclusive network. You're not getting, a great broker down at the mall's Fidelity branch. Right. But a lot of people are like, oh, I remember over the years I've tried to help people, and people are like, whoa, you're not helping grandpa. Like, we have a guy at Morgan Stanley and we'll talk to him. And the guy at Morgan Stanley says, like, he's doing okay and he shouldn't sell his apartment and buy Bitcoin and prepare for the future because of Social Security. It's all good. And this,
so many people pay for just a pat on the back. You're doing good. You're doing good. You had a good year. You had a good year.
Yeah. And they want to be told what to do because it's stressful out there and it's overwhelming. I think, Bitcoin...
we sound like such arrogant assholes.
Yeah, probably. But I think, because, Bitcoin before, maybe you have these thoughts, but before Bitcoin, I started to put all my questions on the back burner because I could prove nothing in fiat land. Like, everything was a fugazi, right? Like, how money works, how the stock should perform. Like, everything's a fugazi. Everything's manipulated. Everything's corrupted, right? And so you're just like, all right, you grow up like wanting to fucking rage against the machine. And by like 25, you're like, all right, I'm going to work. I'm going to drink this, I drank tea, I didn't drink coffee, but I'm going to grind through the day. I'll go to the gym. I got other things to do. You're not going to fight the world like when it's all fiat. And then you find Bitcoin and you're like, wait a minute, there's this thing that I can find a real truth. Like, no one can debate that they'll never, like, the way the code is written, if you run your node, that your node will never accept more than 21 million Bitcoin. It doesn't have to be written into the code. It's how you run your node, right? And no one can debase your units in the system, and no one can, like, again, back to the example, like, you want to get in business and, like, you want to give up your corporate job. You're like, I'll open a bar. Are you going to be able to get a license? Like, does the mayor know you? Like, are you close enough to the mayor? In any of these games, like, everything has business risk. Like, like you got your life savings at Amazon? Like, what if Jeff Bezos, like, gets a blowjob on video and that leaks and, like, your retirement's gone now because you thought you were in the best stock? And, like, you could read their 10K and be like, okay, I know they're going to come out with, like, this amazing product, and they could fail to execute. You're going to put your life savings in that? And the more you diversify, like, and this is someone who grew up, finance and accounting degrees, is like they teach you to diversify, right? It's like no one builds wealth through diversification. And literally when you boil it down, you're like, okay, like, I'm going to get more involved in things I know less about. Like, every bet you get from your main bet is a deviation from how much you know about the main thing. And how much do you know about Amazon stock? Are you really reading the 10K every year and the quarterly and the minutes and going to the calls, and, like, you know nothing about these things, and you're going to put your life savings into these things. Yep. And so Bitcoin finally gives you this thing where, like, I could stop arguing at the parties about everything, even national politics. Like, fuck it. Like, I don't have to get involved at all at any national politics conversations with anyone I don't want to, because I now have this tool that defends me against enough of it.
Right.
Right. And like maybe I had to vote with my feet and I moved from Illinois to Florida, right, to change some things around me. But like Bitcoin was a big part of that journey. I'd like to think I would do it without Bitcoin, but like, you know, it's a financial tool.
Yeah, it's fuck you money.
Right. And it's so all of a sudden like you have this thing where like no one can argue with you. Like
Right.
it's not debatable. And that empowers you to go back to all those other things that you put to the side and said like, remember when I was 5 years old and I was like, hey, Dad, those clouds look weird. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's what planes do. And you're like, no, I don't think planes. And like, shut up. And like 40 years later, you're like, no, like I was right. Like,
I was right.
You know,
Exactly.
and I was like, oh, like, remember when like I was like questioning like food in my 20s? And I became a fucking vegetarian or pescatarian for 9 years. Like, why? Why was I looking at sort of the machination and industrialization of food? And, you know, I might have went down some wrong rabbit holes, but I was still trying to figure out like what I should be doing better.
Right.
And I was still finding that. And I couldn't find any truth there until like Bitcoin.
Do you
in a
think
lot of
that's like just the curious mindset that got people into Bitcoin earlier?
I think that's all
that
it
like
is truth seekers.
truth seekers.
And then not just truth
'Cause I
seekers,
just-
but having the
so
humility
many-
to admit you're wrong about
Right,
all
and
the
change
things
your-
you hold dear and dear.
and change your mind.
Right.
The
So
willingness
there are a
to
lot of
change
people
your
that
mind.
might be truth seekers that like are a little too arrogant because they believe in the truth they already hold.
Yes.
And that's where the humility thing comes in.
Right. That's why I love what you said earlier, you know, strong beliefs held lightly.
Right.
Because
Which I got from
if,
Mark Yusko, I think.
if you're not able to change your mind quickly in the face of new information,
Right, because I know
then
I'm
you're
lacking
just fooling
information.
yourself.
Right, I know everything I'm thinking about. I'm lacking a lot of
Yeah.
information. I'm trying to gather as much as I can. I'm going to spend more time on the things that I need to know more about. But even Bitcoin, like I know
You
nothing
can't-
about
you can't-
Bitcoin
yeah.
in terms of like knowing everything.
That's right.
Right. And so like there's always so much more to learn. Now there's other subjects I know nothing about that I don't feel the desire or the necessity maybe. to
So
learn.
how did as an accountant, what clicked for you with Bitcoin when you first found out about it? Was it your accounting background that cued you in, or
I
was
definitely think that was part of it. I mean, I was drawn to like Pierre Richard, Stéphane Levere, Robert Breedlove. I mean, these are all former accountants.
Yeah.
But I was like, but this, and it's running the numbers. I think when I started hearing about it as a ledger,
yeah?
I think one of the things I fell down wrongly into was like triple ledger accounting and what.
Why do you
would
say that
mean
was wrong?
at the time? Because I think that made blockchain more than it was
Okay.
in the technology. So, because it made it sound more applicable to other things outside of money and this
okay.
one thing.
Gotcha.
Right. So it's sort of like a red herring at the time. Maybe that'll come back into play in a different way. But so yeah, I definitely think it was accounting. It was this ledger. It could run the numbers. Like I said, like you can't. The numbers are what they are, and you can't change. Like no, there's 42 million coins. No, there aren't, bro. Or whatever you want to like think about how you calculate money or total market value, like how you use unit of account. So that's really like fundamentally change as an account. Very important though, because like you know you're already used to converting things from different currencies into this currency. So I never really thought about currency as something as a store of value or to invest in. I think that's why I missed Bitcoin early on.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right. Like I didn't need black market money. I thought that was cool for people who need, even if it was white market money, like whatever they were buying with. I thought that was cool. They had currency and rails, but I didn't know it was something you could store money in. I never went, oh, I'm going to scale into the yen over the next 3 years because I really feel like Japan's got great central banking policy. And as a 23-year-old accountant at Ernst & Young, like I'm going to take my $4,000 in disposable income and go hard into currency. And I wasn't going to, you know, with limited investable income or savings, I wasn't looking at more esoteric plays like options. And, you know, I was like, let's just stick to the basics until I grow some wealth, right? But Bitcoin, yeah, I mean, really as a ledger from an accounting perspective, sure. One of the other things that really drew me though was sort of like that, truth seeking, but sort of that really the toxicity of Bitcoiners. And when they would say things that sounded that like you could prove it right, false or right or wrong. So they would say things like there will only be 21 million Bitcoin and everything will be divisible. So I'd have to learn, what does that mean? And can I argue that? And kind of refute what they're saying. And I found out I just couldn't, like what they said sounded like I would love to fight with these people online and prove them wrong. This sounds retarded.
Max Kaiser's awesome at that, right? Like he'll dump truth bombs on you and you're like,
and as a Bitcoiner,
and you have to go test it.
Right. So you're like, I'm going to test that out. And I would be like, I kept coming up to like that. I can't get to a place where I'm like, that sounds like I can get to where they're wrong.
Right.
Right. So then when they would say things that were very like, well, Bitcoin's going to the moon, Bitcoin's going to $1 million a coin or 10 million a coin. Well, all these other things were proving out to be right. So it seemed like just from like I know what drew me in the beginning. I was like fighting inflation, and I was like, this seems like I'm not a speculative person. That's what's really, when I talk to people about Bitcoin, they think sound like a speculator.
Right.
And I'm moving to Bitcoin,
trader.
de-risk my life.
Right.
And but back then I was looking at it as speculative, and I was like, wow, like maybe if I put a small amount of money in this, the way they're sounding, like maybe this thing is going to $1 million this cycle, and they started learning about this after that, the crash, because I got into Bitcoin like November 2nd, 2017.
Ooh.
It went over down, and I did better with shitcoins for those first 6 weeks.
Sure.
But then you crash and you go from genius to idiot. And you're like, do I sell it all and go back to fiat, or do I stay in this thing? And do I stay in it and leave my position, or even increase my position and see this as an opportunity?
Yeah. I mean, I got started a little earlier than you, but I remember that's those same emotions, like, because it's like the money grew so exponentially fast, and then give it all back in 18 and 19.
Right.
You feel like an idiot. Eventually the price went below my initial.
Am I still excited about this thing? Do I still want to learn about
Right,
this thing?
right.
Do I want to pull
I mean,
all my
Bitcoin
money
went
from this thing?
below my initial purchase prices.
Right.
So I was
way below my
sitting on a negative bag.
Yeah.
And, but you have all those questions. It was like, was I wrong? Because I believed strongly
Well, how much
that
did I know? Did I know?
you
Was I ever right?
Right. You question everything.
Was I right? Now we're wrong.
But I guess that's like you said, though, that question, instead of just giving up, questioning and questioning and questioning and questioning got me to the point where it's like, oh my God, I just need to be buying as much as possible.
But you probably had to do some work during that period. Read some
ton.
articles, listen to podcasts.
Dude, it was like 5 podcasts a day.
Right,
it was
so
like
it's like a second
nonstop.
job.
Yeah, it was a second job for sure. And but you get to the point, and I remember making decisions like, I just have to buy a lot. I have to buy a lot. And then it went down to 3,000, and I was like, maybe I'm wrong, and I was afraid to touch it. And then it came back up to like, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 10 or what. And then it went, and I'm like, I gotta buy. And then boom, back down to 3,800. And I was like, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I remember.
So, you're not alone if you're having these kind of emotions. And which is why guys that have been in it a long time, like Cedric, just say, like, buy it, to hold it, to never sell it.
The best time to buy, is when it makes you puke.
Yes.
And I don't know how many opportunities we're gonna have like that going forward from, again,
that's not, like, it's not making you puke anymore, but for somebody else,
well, there might be things
if
that
somebody
make me
buys,
puke. I don't know,
500K and it goes down to 100K, they're going to feel pretty ill.
Yeah, 100%. No, but at 100K is when they should buy, and it should make them puke. I remember American HODL, like, so around 2019, I've done work now, but like then there's like conviction through numbers. And then there's like learning about other people's roller coaster rides and hearing the anecdotes. And so someone like American HODL was just really influential from two perspectives. From maybe like smash buying during lows. So like he did a tweet. He was like, wow, I just bought a shit ton of GBTC at the time. I guess he had money stuck in an account. And he was like, and I just had to walk around the block to not puke. And he's like, that probably means it's a good buy.
Yeah.
And so you realize like when you don't want to buy is when you should, and but man, just hearing those things, and so then knowing that you maybe missed that moment, but then the next time it goes from like 32 to 21, you're like, oh man, like maybe this is my American HODL moment, right? And maybe this is my opportunity, and so it's good to hear from other Bitcoiners, so that you can kind of learn the ropes in advance of touching. So you don't have to touch the stove and make mistakes. Yeah. But you can make the most of your opportunities too.
I always feel like everybody's going to touch the stove and get burned the first time. So that's why I always try and set people up to just start small, let that confidence build over time, and educate yourself. As much as you want them to YOLO in with everything they have, because
Well, now we're in a weird place with Wall Street, like the ETF being the most successful ETF of all time. I mean, the Powell's comparing Bitcoin to gold. Like, when I was at 65, when Bitcoin was at 65K, and I was standing with a neighbor who's just a guy in IT.
The last cycle, you mean? The last cycle?
The year ago, just 5 months ago.
Okay.
9 months ago, whatever it was, when we were at 65K.
Yeah.
And this was after the ETFs. And I was like, I check in with him because I first told him about Bitcoin at 15, 16K when I first met him.
Yeah.
And because it seemed like we were, kind of getting to know each other. And he's, another father in the neighborhood. He's in IT. You would think he'd get it. And so at 65K, I was like, so I just wanted to do a poll. Like, what do you think? Like, what do you think of Bitcoin now? And he's like, Bitcoin now? What do I think? I just don't know. So you could see there was just no work.
Yeah.
All you see is the movement in price. And he turned to me and he said, he had just bought the house, and I think at peak. And he was like, I wish I bought this house in 2016. And you could see the mindset of always being behind, right? And so, like, if you're bringing me something, I must be behind. Like, there's nothing I can get in front of in this world. Yeah. And that's a mindset. Like, Hodl talks about, too, the first thing you have to do in Bitcoin is love yourself. Like, start there. Like, believe that, like, what you find and what you believe in is true. And so Bitcoin, like, helps people move from belief to, like, it's just fact. Okay, it's better built money. Like, it's literally, like, it's hard to explain. This is designed to go forever. What does that mean? Well,
but you're not going to get that unless you're playing with it.
I agree.
And for me, I wouldn't.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, my first buy was like $500, and
even $10,
and then it became
3,000.
I was like, why the hell did I not just YOLO in with everything? I thought it was an unbelievable tech. Like, you start having all these self-doubts, and so it takes time to learn it, and you can't be hard on yourself.
I mean,
but the beauty is
that takes you to love yourself and believe in yourself, and that you can miss something and still not miss out entirely. I mean, there's just so many factors to that.
Right.
You have to not want to be like everyone else in a lot of ways.
You just have to, right. Benefit yourself. Do what you can do and benefit yourself.
Right. Because I think a lot of people are like, wow, like if I go into this weird thing and I lose my money, everyone's going to make fun of me.
Yeah.
And I'd rather go down on the ship with everybody.
Now Cedric knows that.
Right. He'll know, and someone will know. Yeah. And I'd rather go down with everybody and not take a chance.
Yep.
And hope that we all boats rise with the tide.
Yeah.
And it's like you think about it, so the tide for them is the S&P 500. And I love saying this, and young people kind of get a kick out of it, but and I consider myself young, so I'm not saying it like that, but I'm saying anyone with a young set of mindset, but I'll be like, Standard & Poor's, what does it stand for? It stands for Standard & Poor. I mean, literally, that's the name of what you're putting your life savings.
I have never thought about that.
It's Standard & Poor's, exactly. It's built for you to be one of the Standard & Poor's. I mean, that's what it's designed for. And I don't know how there's no one who's been yeah, man, I got rich from investing in the Standard & Poor's. I mean,
we need the exceptional and rich index.
So it's hard. I mean, I don't know. And then there's there's so much that they have to be, that they are thinking of beyond Bitcoin. I mean, even just if they got kids, they got brothers and sisters, parents. I mean, lives are so busy now. Yeah. And it's wait a minute, you're telling me my money is fucked?
That's the
because the whole game is to get more of this money.
That was the FOSS pitch, right? For the kids. Do it for the kids. And that is a good way, I guess, to frame people's minds if they have kids.
Sure, low time preference.
Low time
especially,
preference.
And build, and I think a lot of, I think it's very fiat to be all I have to do is, I'm not saying everyone's doing this, but some people might just be all I have to do is stack sats, man, and I could just ignore all the problems of the world. When I said I don't have to get into the conversation about politics, doesn't mean that I'm not concerned with these issues or want to help do things locally where I can have an impact. But I just don't want to talk to someone ad nauseum about something that we can't solve, and they're never going to kind of agree on some sort of North Pole of truth. Right?
Speaking of geopolitics, and excuse me, what do you think about the ramping up of the war right now?
I try not to think about it.
I know it's horrid and disgusting, but this is what I'm getting at. So what I see geopolitics, the debt spiral, this new monetary frontier, all meeting in the next 3 months, and it's like fireworks. It's Bitcoin's moment,
or maybe everything just kind of keeps going.
I don't
And
think so.
It's possible though.
I don't think-
Or it's
well,
possible. Everything kinda
everything's
keeps going,
possible.
and Bitcoin rises in
I'm
price
just outlining
dramatically.
my highest probability is shit's about to get really chaotic. I think we're kind of like in the eye of the storm right now. Obviously, I felt like I was on the edge of a hurricane, literally and figuratively, going into the election. But now I feel like we're kind of in the eye of the storm, and we're just starting to feel the winds blowing again, and it's going to get freaking nuts in the first 6 months of his administration. And I think that is literally like Bitcoin's time to shine, to show the world that it is a safe haven asset. This will be like the first opportunity where Bitcoin says it's a safe haven asset. And it becomes a safe haven asset because so many global fiat currencies are going to be under stress and decay. So many governments are going to be under stress and decay. And this is literally the time when Bitcoin becomes the life raft for sovereigns. So if you can get in there, if you get into the boat now, I think a year from now, it'll be a whole different world. I think it's like literally the setting of the new playing field, the setting of new rules, the Bretton Woods 2.0, if you want to call it that. But like we're going to have that level of change over the next 6 months to a year. And it doesn't feel that way right now. I feel totally hopeful. But when I look at the little cauldrons that are spinning around the globe and in economics and in the financial system, I'm like, oh, this thing's about to blow.
Where is the gold? And I
I
don't
know what you mean.
No, I don't mean like that in a conspiracy. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of gold in America.
Right.
Where is more gold? Where
Apparently there's 3 more trillion in El
okay,
Salvador
no,
as of
known
yesterday.
gold. Where are vaults? Where were the biggest vaults of gold?
Oh, Switzerland.
Switzerland, anywhere else? That would be like
I mean, I know there's others, but I don't know exactly. I think there's some in Argentina, right?
I don't know if they hold it with the Bank of England. I don't know where the gold is, and I wonder.
I mean,
from
there's vaults obviously in lots of parts of the world, but I mean the big vaults that store bullion, the big vaults, I believe, are all in Switzerland for the most part. But
Iran,
then you got
Syria, like
yeah. Are they
Taiwan,
buying
they
and
don't have
storing
any
there?
gold? Because my question
that
is,
what you're getting at?
what I'm really getting at is if there's actual ground war.
Yeah.
And assets are actually being at risk of being stolen.
Yeah.
This really is a case for Bitcoin to perform really well during war. If
I hadn't thought
you got
of
to
that.
sell the gold out the back door before it gets taken from you.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Right. Or even your IOU, maybe, your gold is in America,
Well,
but
this
it's
is
not
why
being
this is why
repatriated
Switzerland
ever.
wants to be neutral all the time.
Right. Like if you have gold in America and you're not an ally of America and you would want to sell it or get it out or,
Right.
Or you lose it.
Well,
and
that's
then
why China is trying to move as much gold into their own country, right?
I would think so. And then, how at risk would their gold be? Could we get their gold? Or, not we being like, oh, let's root for that. But I mean, like, if actual gold is at risk, then most people need to move away from physical assets that are at risk towards digital assets that are not, that are highly more defensible.
I was thinking more in terms of like as war accelerates over the next 6 months, and I think that is going to
Like
happen.
kinetic war, though, you mean?
Yes. Like, I think Ukraine heats up, Syria gets worse, Libya, all the stands, everything. The Israeli front, I think it all heats up. And as that happens, that's going to put immense amount of stress on fiat. Fiat's going to get debased.
Sure, to pay for war.
Pay for war. Also, the risk of having your dollars in a financial system that is under the stress of war. And if that does what I think it's going to do, I think there's going to be a flight to Bitcoin like you can't imagine.
Right, and the national winner of that race, the state winner of that race, gets to set the new Bretton Woods.
Yes.
Right, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
And that's like a 2 to 4 year process before we even get to that moment.
But I think the race starts in
I think the race
in the
already
beginning
started.
of Trump's term.
Right.
Right.
Because they have to
There's people
amass a
front-running that,
stockpile
right?
before you go to the next
I
agreement.
mean, this is why we blew out
Right.
to 100K.
So then my
and
question
we're probably
for you-
going to 120, 150 before Trump gets into office. Trump gets into office, and then it's a formal game on. And at that point, I think it becomes such a mad dash for the exit that fiat globally starts to feel the pressure. So you could do a lot of, like, he could do tariffs and he could do other things that are pro dollar strength. But people around the world could be dumping dollars to buy Bitcoin. Net, we could have a dropping dollar. It's in our best interest to have a dropping dollar. If he wants to reshore manufacturing, if he wants to drive economic growth, he needs a weaker dollar. But normally in a time of war, you would see the dollar as a safe haven asset and you would see that dollar rise. I think the dollar is going to get sold along with everything else. And the flight to gold and Bitcoin is going to be real. That stress actually kind of supports the long-term Trump administration goals of rebuilding America as a manufacturing base, re-employing people, creating an export market that goes beyond exporting our debt. So I think that this is like the point in history that we've been waiting for, where Bitcoin just all of a sudden becomes like, oh, it is a safe haven asset. And then coming out of the back of that, like you said, if we have the strategic reserve or the Bitcoin stockpile or however it gets defined, and we're actually adding Bitcoin to our balance sheet, then yeah, I think we have a seat at that table, and maybe the strongest seat at that table.
I want to invite you to the first Bitcoin event of the new year, and that's Bitcoin Day Naples one-day pleb fest, Saturday, January 18th. You can meet other Bitcoin and Bitcoin Matrix fans and hear content from some of your favorite Bitcoin voices like Larry Lepard, Bob Burnett, CJ Constantinos, Paul Tarantino, Carly Benson, Charlie Shrem, and me. You'll get access to high signal discussions where we can do deep dives on the macro outlook as the Trump administration takes office, strategic reserves, the monetization of Bitcoin, and even learn how to influence your friends and create your own Bitcoin community. Your ticket will also get you access to exclusive events like the Naples famous after party. Head over to bitcoinday.io and use the promo code MATRIX for $21 off your ticket. We'll kick off the new year in style, celebrate that 100K milestone, and hang out with some of the best Bitcoiners on the planet. I'm excited to see you guys there. And now, back to the show. I mean, I would love to see Bitcoin extremely more non-correlated with the rest of the market and demonstrate that value that you're saying. I mean, I just get nervous thinking about.
Let me ask you this, though. Do you think that correlation is, I think that just is a factor of the 4-year cycle, right? Because you could look at Bitcoin in any part of the cycle, but that 4-year cycle is so consistent. You can be like, oh yeah, well, in this part of the 4-year cycle, we are trending with the expansion of the monetary system, and therefore everything's bullish. Right. And in this part of the cycle, we're trending down because we're pulling monetary units out of the system, and Bitcoin is dropping, and so is everything else. I don't think that's a Bitcoin being correlated. I think that's Bitcoin just being a monetary sponge. Right. And we're at a point in time in history where the debt spiral's so big that it's everything up, everything down, everything up, everything down. Everything's one, right? And so you just, Bitcoin being the asset that goes up the most. Right. So in a world where everything is correlated and you look across that world, it's hard to invest in anything but Bitcoin.
I would agree. I mean, it's a simple A/B test. And it's so surprising now, just discussing with people Bitcoin. I mean, just the evidence we have in front of us of what's happening geopolitically, what's happening economically, the financialization of Bitcoin, the conversation. It's surprising more people aren't just catching on. But I think a lot of that is just, I don't know if it's nihilism. I don't know if it's arrogance or, lack of humility, but it's still surprising to see it just not being a no-brainer for more people. And like you said, I think we're getting very close to the suddenly part.
Yes, the suddenly part.
You know?
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
another way to say it.
Yeah. And, I think even if, I'd love to say, we all hope for like, things like retail, our friends and family to, get on the Bitcoin standard. And I think anyone who gets on now is still early. I think we still have greater returns in front of us. But I think just quite frankly, the real money that's going to move us is not going to be retail. Like retail, I don't think is going to come back in a stampede. And even if retail did come back in a stampede, I think if institutions come in a stampede, they just have that much more capital and will drive the market that much more.
I think that's absolutely where we're at.
Yeah, and we're seeing it now with, Microsoft is voting on it today. I don't think they'll pass.
Right.
But like Amazon, I think has to vote on it. And like it's just becoming way more of like, that's now going to be standard protocol.
Yes.
And it's going to be, the Microsoft thing, if they don't take it, is going to be one of those sort of like Paul Krugman fax machine moments.
Yes.
Right. And the real irony and the laugh is going to be when Microstrategy buys Microsoft.
Oh my God.
At the end of this cycle.
Right.
Because Microstrategy is like, yeah, we could use a little software business.
Yeah.
Right. And so.
But and also we have the FASB rules come out in 25.
Yeah.
And FASB is really a game changer, right, from an accounting perspective.
It's beyond the scope of like game changer.
Maybe explain to me how you think that's going to impact. Do you think that just mean a flood of corporates are coming because of that?
Well, it makes it a lot easier to carry Bitcoin on your balance sheet and benefit from the price appreciation. So right now, the way Bitcoin is carried on the balance sheet, you can only recognize price depreciation. So you take a hit, and so
you basically mark the market on every low. Is that
to the low, right? And then you don't mark to market back to any highs or any increases in price. The new rules with FASB will allow you to market to market and take, I believe, the earnings to maybe even realized earnings.
Oh wow!
But so over the last year or so, MicroStrategy has been showing negative earnings every quarter. So in Q1, which will be like when they report, like will be in April of 2025 or May of 2025, they'll have to restate the prior year and capture all the losses as earnings in Q1.
So, but they don't have to pay tax on that, do they? If it's just capital gains?
That's getting a little bit above my pay grade.
Okay.
No, I don't think they're going to pay tax on it because I don't think it's going to flow through
it's
net
just
income like that.
Okay.
But
it's not earnings per se, but it's
so it's not taxable earnings.
It's their balance sheet growth.
Yeah, but it'll flow through EPS, I believe, is my interpretation of it. Yeah. So that's going to change like how that stock is looked at by analysts. I mean, right now, any analyst
it'd be like if a company owned a bunch of brick and mortar, and the value of their real estate was going up.
Right, but you only you marked it down when there was a real estate crash, and now you own all this real estate. I mean, most small businesses and even corporations, how they really have made money over the last 50 years was from the real estate assets.
Owning assets, yeah.
The plumber, he bought the shop, he made his salary every year. You hear all these stories nowadays on Twitter. I don't know if they're all true, and I don't think it's going to last of all these, PE guys, private equity buying these, plumbing shops and just enhancing marketing. But I think that's a lot of that's bullshit.
But think about what you just said, and it just struck me real quickly. These guys all of us, right? We go work for our salary, and it was the assets that made us wealthy.
Yes.
And if you made
which wasn't the core
if you could
business.
just extract 5% out of that income and you put that into assets, that's how you got wealthy.
Or leverage the asset that you own,
yes.
the existing asset.
Now,
and use because you didn't need repairs and maintenance on your building, so you need maintenance reserves. Put those in Bitcoin. Take the cash flow from the tenants or whatever and put that in Bitcoin.
Right. This is what I was getting at. Is that imagine a future where you're still the plumber, you're still the electrician, you're still the guy mowing lawns, you're still making your 10% margin. You're going to use 95% of that to pay your bills, and you take that little 5% that's left, and you're going to invest in Bitcoin. Or imagine you just get paid in Bitcoin,
right?
And you're getting paid in the asset. So now you take that 0.5%, you don't even have to convert it; it just sits on your balance sheet, and that builds your wealth.
Right.
So running a business where you're earning Bitcoin, I don't know. Peter McCormick did this, right? I mean, that's just running his podcast and saving his Bitcoin.
Well, biblically speaking, you'd want to have a third of your wealth in your home, a third of your wealth in your business. Maybe you have a garment business and you have to have inventory. You own a third of your wealth in money. At the time, it was gold, right? So that's your savings. You have a third of your wealth in liquid savings, a third of your wealth probably in the business you run. Maybe you're W-2, so your balance sheet looks different. But if you own your business, you own inventory, and then maybe a third of your balance sheet is your home. Property taxes sort of changed the conversation about owning a home, but just from the perspective of like stability and owning a home, maybe some of your wealth is in there. And that makes sense when your home has just been sold to you at utility value, right?
By the way, I've been talking to a company, Orange Bridge. These
Bitcoin backed loans?
No. So what they're doing is they're doing a non-interest line of credit. I mean, the interest accrues, but you don't have to pay monthly interest. Line of credit against your home that has to be used to buy Bitcoin. And then when you buy the Bitcoin, they record the value that you paid for it, and they're watching the value, and then they start messaging you when it's up 300%. Like, you should pay off your loan, you should pay off your loan, you should pay off your loan. They try and get you to sell and clear out that loan, but it's like a 10-year loan.
Right.
Where you don't have to make a payment.
Right.
But the interest just accrues.
Right.
And as long as your Bitcoin is growing faster than that accruement, it's basically double secured, right? The loan is secured against the Bitcoin and the real estate.
Right. Right. And every vertical,
amazing,
from life insurance
it's all
to
coming.
health insurance, it all should be backed by Bitcoin, should be in the reserves.
Right.
But right now, life insurance companies or insurance companies can't buy spot Bitcoin.
Right. FEMA needs to get off their butt and buy Bitcoin to pay for all these hurricanes.
Or maybe stop causing the hurricanes. I don't know.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Maybe spend less on the hurricane production.
That's our other podcast.
Right.
That's
right. But I mean, there's a whole market for people who, like, what MicroStrategy is sort of brilliantly engineering is refining Bitcoin for the market that can't buy spot Bitcoin and wants price exposure to Bitcoin. So, I mean, that's brilliant. I wonder when he went from like, I'm using Bitcoin as a store of value to like, I'm going to be a Bitcoin evangelist and, get other companies on board and like get my store value to be better to I'm refining Bitcoin. Because those are different, Bitcoin. The refining Bitcoin moment to me is sort of like, Jeff Bezos knew he was attacking. He probably knew he was attacking all retail verticals before everyone else, because everyone else just thought he was attacking books, right? Yeah. But he's like, I'm doing every vertical. It just hasn't happened yet. But he didn't see AWS and cloud computing coming, right? Like he didn't know that was going to be, 66% of Amazon's business 20 years from when he started. So I don't think Michael Saylor necessarily saw Bitcoin refining the way, he's describing how Rockefeller refined oil for the gas market the way. I don't think he thought of that 4 years ago. I wonder when he had that light bulb moment that it was much bigger than just, stacking his own balance sheet with reserves,
I mean, do you think he's building essentially a Bitcoin financial services firm over the long term? Or
yeah, I think it goes way beyond that. I think it's like a Berkshire Hathaway type entity. It's just a massive conglomerate. Like what I'm trying to say, there's so many things he's as
so you think they're going to buy other businesses?
I don't know what they're going to do, but as the largest holder of Bitcoin, there'll be things that we can't even dream of that they'll be able to exploit from a monetization, financialization perspective. Right. Whether it's loaning out the Bitcoin or any, I don't know. But they're going to use that in ways that'll be very profitable. Right now, it's just profitable buying the Bitcoin and giving the bond market exposure. I mean, that's $100 trillion market or $200 trillion market that he's gonna that every company is copycatting him. And that's the thing. It's back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show. Like, he can do this and he can open source what he's doing. And two things. One, it's a win-win for everybody. He's in a special situation because he's the first mover. So, even in Bitcoin, it's a win-win, right? Like, but there is first mover advantage to buying Bitcoin in 2010 than there is to buying in 2020. You might have bought in 2010 and sold in 2014, and maybe the guy in 2020 who buys has a second weird mover advantage over you, but like it definitely would have been better to hold from 2010, right? So like MicroStrategy could fumble this somehow, but like no one's going to catch them, no private entity.
Right.
So whatever like any entity is able to do with sort of a large size of Bitcoin, they will be able to do to the greatest extent. Like other companies can copy Berkshire Hathaway, but if you don't have the capital pool, like there's only so many deals you can make. You have and you have less of a deal flow.
Right.
Less people coming to you, right? So you have
God,
less.
think about it like if it's like he buys a financial.
He could buy a country.
Yeah,
it's going to get crazy.
It's going to get crazy.
And I don't know what he's going to do, but like, and I think new ideas are going to be brought to him. He's going to be like a kingmaker because like ideas are brought from the smartest people in the world. Because it's kind of like if you want to build somewhere where it's going to last forever, then you got to build on Bitcoin, right?
Does he own more than Satoshi now?
Does the company own more?
Yes,
than
yeah.
Satoshi? No, I don't think so. That's also something I thought about on the way over here. Like, it's been extremely quiet, his buys. Like, we always hear every week now Microstrategy's buys, but like, we haven't heard a peep about his personal holdings in, I think, a long time. Yeah, and you'd have to think from a personal standpoint, even whatever his end goal is to give it all away, like, ego-wise, like, he has to be buying. He has to be buying a shit ton personally because he doesn't, even his shares in Microstrategy are not real Bitcoin, right? So, and, you know, he's not the largest probably shareholder of Microstrategy. So he probably wants, just from his own personal standpoint, his own stash, but we don't hear about it.
Oh, I wonder if he even can be in charge of that.
His personal stash or like the
release of the can he deduct the buys and be working at MicroStrategy saying, yeah, we should buy more Bitcoin, like engineering debt to buy more Bitcoin at MicroStrategy while simultaneously buying it for himself?
I'd hope he's allowed to at least maybe algorithmically buy and just say something like that's
what
I'm going to buy every minute.
He might have somebody doing it for him,
right, on his behalf, like a blind trust, or whatever,
something like that.
Right, sure.
I don't know.
But then, I'd also wonder how someone.
But maybe it's not because it's a commodity. Maybe it's not even an issue.
I don't know. But I also think like, so he's in a position where he just sees, even from a personal, like I couldn't see things as a miner's perspective truly until I started being part of a mining farm. Like you could read an article, you could think esoteric, you could philosophize about it, you could intellectualize about it, but you're going to discover new things as a miner than you would have before. And so like, I think for Michael Saylor, he's brilliant, but he had a $500 million melting ice cube, right? So he had a problem to solve. And so it's interesting how, I wonder what he's trying to look at now and where he's angling to figure out new things. But I think having those problems help you develop new solutions or come to solutions sooner than people who don't have that problem.
Right.
And the size of the problem brings it to the forefront of your life, I think, faster. You know.
He seems very pro-America also. Do you think there's any plans there to gift America Bitcoin?
I mean, I think there could be. I mean, why couldn't America be looking at his stash? I think it's a massive honeypot.
No, I know. But I mean, like putting the 6102 aside, like thinking in terms of like, I mean, America, his own personal stash. Like, could he gift some of that to the Treasury?
MicroStrategy. I mean, America might just come to MicroStrategy and say, "We're going to give you 100,000 per share.
Right.
We're literally going to print some number, that you're going to be okay with, and we're going to buy all your shares, and then we're going to keep the Bitcoin."
And then have a shareholder vote. Yeah.
You know, I mean, or just take the. I mean, they could just do things.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
And I think your question hints at is Michael Saylor aware of anything ahead of time? Like, is there, a handshake that I'm acquiring all this
on behalf of
the government for future use?
Yeah.
And I think, I think that's where I think, regardless of whether that happened or not, I still think it's the most brilliantly engineered security in the history of the stock market, not just for what he's already accomplished, but for what is going to be accomplished. And but it also points out very clearly, it's not Bitcoin. You're not getting any of the attributes of Bitcoin. You have counterparty risk, you have managerial risk, you have custodian risk, you have all of it. So, if it's not for people who want the qualities of Bitcoin. And maybe there are Bitcoiners who have money trapped in the system, but he's not trying to sell you and me MicroStrategy shares.
Right.
He is really going after an institutional market. It's not for retail. Retail might capitalize on it and want to get involved in it. But you can get rug pulled. You have to think defensively with him, just like, or not him personally, maybe. I mean, you should, but just anybody personally and any company. And so it's not real Bitcoin, and all those fears and concerns would be there, right? And I think it's like a weird thing because I think like also for Bitcoiners is the sort of the trying to figure out the balance of like, okay, I have this wealth in this new paradigm, and I now have custody of it. But now you become your own counterparty risk, right? Like, how do you manage your Bitcoin and your counterparty risk to your maybe relatives and your heirs, right? Because just like if you lose your money at the bank, you go to the bank and you get back from them. Well, your family is like, well, now you're the bank, right? Dad, mom, like if you lose the Bitcoin, like what do we get, right? You're our counterparty risk. And so you have to learn how to manage. Like, I wonder how Michael Saylor manages his personal stack. Like, how does he gain comfort with the guy who owns the blind trust and manages his stack for him, maybe?
Right.
Like, does he have a key of 3? You know, is he at Unchained and Coinbase and him and Unchained to get on a call? And he's like, I got my key, and if I lose my key, you guys got me. But like, only one of you could lose a key. Like, so can I see your system? Like,
right.
you know, is he at OnRamp and it's at 100 different places? Is he with the Bitcoin advisor? Like, what is he doing? Is he just got his own little like cold card? Like, and what does Microstrategy do? And like, I really do think if you have
Microstrategy, if I remember right, I think didn't he buy originally at Coinbase? I don't know if they still do.
and I think they still have. But what does that look like? And how do you gain comfort, right? And how does Coinbase gain comfort? And it's a much different thing. If you have $1,000 in Bitcoin, your security system is different than if you have 10,000, than if you have 100,000. And there are numbers that you and I can't even fathom what it's like to protect that, because we're at nowhere near these levels, right?
Could you have $1 billion in a multi-sig at Unchained?
Like, who's in the multi-sig? Is it an N of 12? Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
We got 97 keys. You know, is there an article that like 97 keys is worse than 3?
I saw that didn't BlackRock just split their entire pile up into like wallets with 400 coins each?
Maybe.
I think they're diversifying even into
and I'm sure there's
multiple multi-sigs.
I'm sure you can find some guru on Twitter who's like, that's the worst way to go.
Right, sure.
Right. And then Coinbase has their guy who's like, we thought about this very deeply and we have our reasons why we don't like your solution because we can't do that and we're a public company. So like we literally cannot do what you just suggested, even though it's better. Right. So good luck, Parman, and grow your stack up to $400,000 coin and utilize your plan then. I mean, and then people who say like, oh, this might be bad for the network, or that Bitcoin's for enemies. Like, it's a neutral network. Bitcoin doesn't care who holds the coins. Right. And whether it's an IOU or there's shares involved or whatever. I mean, but there's no way to fathom the way he's looking at these problems. And there's no way to fathom the solutions that are being brought to him and weighing through that. And like, could you imagine, like, you think about it for 3 months and then after, like, all right, we're going to go this way. And then like 6 months, you're like, fuck, no, we did it wrong. Like we should not have done that. Or even like, where are the proof of reserves on, I'd like to see that on MicroStrategy coins.
Yeah.
That would be good to see as a public company that's at the forefront of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it's just disclosed. It's just disclosed.
They should disclose more, I think, there. And that's
nice.
Maybe they can't for some reason.
Yeah.
Maybe not with their current setup. I don't mean like they can't because of laws or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like you don't know the issues they're facing and the risks they're trying to avoid or decrease or minimize. Like, yeah, we could do that, but then we open ourselves up to this conversation and that and this, and maybe we'll do that in 6 months if we can.
Exactly.
I
think I saw.
How does El Salvador protect their coins? Like, how do they know this guy doesn't get on a plane one day?
At the Central Reserve Bank.
I don't know. How does Bukele get comfortable that it's not going to be taken from the country? That's not going to be taken from him. How does the country get comfortable that he's not going to take it? I mean, and it's not like they can have a real open forum discussion on this. Right. But their solutions would probably be of interest to people trying to figure out the pros and cons of different, because there are always pros and cons of your choices. And you're never getting to like
That's
no
an interesting question, because that is, there is a Central Reserve Bank holding Bitcoin.
Right.
And do
they have a key in Antarctica buried where like 3 guys know about it, like,
I hope not. That's where all the reptilians are.
Right. So, yeah, fair enough. So, but he knows about them, right? But like, I don't know how they manage that. And it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting conversation between Bukele and Saylor. Like, if they felt they weren't recorded.
Fly on the wall.
Like, what would they talk about?
Right.
And would
Hey bro, how are you holding your keys?
Yeah, like, what's your plan? Like, and just, what they would share. What people in that position would share if they could speak off the record.
Right.
Because they're having experiences that most people can't relate to.
Yeah.
Even if it's just scale,
Yeah. It's wild that Coinbase is the one that's getting so much of this custody.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I mean, they must be according.
good at it,
I
I
mean, they
guess.
must be good at it, but I
Not
wonder
good
if
running
I
the
wonder if it's
sales.
just because they're publicly traded.
Well, that's a big.
Hopefully, it's not. Hopefully, it's because their security practices are so good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's because I think it's because they got first mover advantage and they're the largest, and I think. But I would think that if any company took it further to do their due diligence, it would be MicroStrategy.
Yeah.
I can see a lot of companies like
Because Fidelity's the only one that custodies their own.
right, and that's another company. Like I hate to use the word trust, but like you argue there's an element of trust in everything
Sure.
you do,
Yeah.
besides maybe you and your stash of satoshis. But Fidelity's been a company that's been around for hundreds of years. They manage trillions of dollars. It seems like a very sort of reputable and credible institution.
Do you think they'll be? This is just a gut feeling that they will be the first ETF that will have an in-kind distribution.
Like out of the
Let
fund?
you take the Bitcoin out.
I don't know if any ETF's ever going to do that. You think that's...
I think Fidelity is going to do that to be more competitive.
Maybe if that's part of their wealth management business and getting people to
I know
hold
that they
Bitcoin in their
offer
custody business.
they offer real Bitcoin. They offer real Bitcoin to their high net worth individuals.
And they're very pro Bitcoin and have been for a long
Right?
time.
So maybe that's a way to migrate people to
I
high net
agree.
worth status. But you've been in our ETF for so long.
But that window could still close. Like maybe they
Yeah.
do that for a year and they say they're not going to close it, but then after a year...
I wonder if they could offer it just to people that have X amount of dollars.
Sure, some
right.
sort of limiting factor.
Yeah.
And it might even be like you can get Bitcoin, but you can't take it out of Fidelity. I would think that would... I don't know.
No, because my friend who's a high net worth client at Fidelity, he can take it straight into self custody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, but I mean from the fund, from the ETF?
No.
Right, so
no.
I don't know if they'll allow that. I mean, who knows what kind of...
I've only
strings they
heard
might
it through
put on it,
hearsay, but
yeah, that sounds
basically
great.
he has a multi-sig with them where they have two keys. He has one, but it can be shifted to where he maintains two keys and they have one, or he can take it all the way out.
Right. So when you have the two keys and they have one, though, you are at the point where you're like, you are 100% counterparty risk, because if you can screw yourself. Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think the next step for that too is just in terms of inheritance and legacy planning. I think that's just a completely unexplored area in Bitcoin, and one that's getting more in people's faces as Bitcoin goes higher up the suddenly part.
Yeah, that's that is coming in a big way.
Yeah, because I think for a lot of people, the wives and maybe didn't care, or maybe it wasn't a big enough part of the portfolio to be concerned about. But I think for a lot of people now, that if you're basing your family on it and your legacy and your planning, it's like it's got to make it there.
I just hosted a I don't know. Were you there? We're at the Naples Wealth Symposium.
No.
I hosted a few people. Matt McClintock was one of them on a panel.
Yep.
And talking about estate planning for Bitcoin. And the stuff he's doing is just phenomenal. If you guys can find clips of him online and listen to the way he's structuring stuff. I think Matty Ice just did an interview with him not too long ago. You should definitely have him on your show.
Yeah, it's a good topic too.
He's working with mega whales,
right?
But the strategies, the structures can be somewhat simplified for plebs, and it's a good listen, and he's really kind of leading the charge in that front. So I'm sure there's a lot of people coming behind him.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it was that kind of thinking was a little cross that bridge when we get there kind of thing, and I think for a lot of people, they're crossing that bridge.
Yes.
And they're like, what do I do now? And how do I handle this?
I just had that discussion when I was in El Salvador 2 weeks ago. I just kept bumping into this couple everywhere I went. And so we had lunch together, and, it just came up, and we were just talking about estate planning and what needs to be done and sort of basic structures for that,
My favorite stories on Twitter are the guys and girls who are like, You're talking about how like the little money they put into Bitcoin has really changed their lives now, from just even paying for like a new refrigerator for the household, or some of the more fortunate people who are like, I'm thinking about quitting my day job that I really hate, or they just did quit and they're like, I'm going to do the side gig that I've always dreamed about and do it
it's
for
awesome,
me.
man.
And that's been really amazing to see those stories.
I really love that topic because, Zach, our producer, and I were just talking about his trip to Europe, right? And how amazing the architecture was, and how much of that architecture was built in the golden era, right? Of when hard money, and that we're going back to that future where you could endow a child with X amount of Bitcoin that could sustain them for life, whether they just borrow against it, they can earn interest on it, whatever that might be, and allow them to truly pursue a passion, a master of whatever thing motivates them, whatever their mission is in life, right? And that's how we got such great innovation and such beautiful architecture and amazing art during the hard money era. And if we're going back, I think we're going back there. I think we're going back there from a vision of, or with the power of technology also, right? So I think the things that humans are going to create over the next 100 years are going to be mind-blowing. And again, I think this all starts next quarter, like the transition, meaning the disruption. Donald Trump's a massive disruptor. And if anybody can handle the heat of everybody hating on him because it's not immediately fixed, he's the guy. So he's going to be totally comfortable reconstructing America. And then I think coming out of that, we're going to then be on a course for 100 years of innovation and progress into a future that we can't even imagine, all funded by this new hard asset. So it's like the golden age 2.0, America 2.0.
Right.
And I'm so excited for my kids, right? Wasn't that way 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was like, fuck, have fun now, because who knows what the fuck the future looks like. But now that's totally changed. That perspective has totally changed. And I think we're on an awesome trajectory. And I tell them all the time when they get worried about all these things that are happening in the world, you're actually be happy you're dealing with this now, because that means we're bottoming and we're going to be going into an amazing future.
Right.
So hopefully that gives people some hope.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all dream of generational wealth and creating a legacy and being able to, I mean, for me, it's the real dream. The fantasy is multi-generational wealth. The real dream is just being able to be there for my kids in very practical and pragmatic ways and help them and give them opportunities as best I can. I do wonder, though, like if great wealth is achieved by Bitcoiners, right? And some Bitcoin children might get like a great inheritance when they're like 28 or 34 and be able to like focus after they've been well raised and all that. They focus on maybe things that they're more passionate about. But I wonder about kids who maybe get great wealth at like 18 and like, do they really go follow their like, or do they just like, because most wealth that gets passed on, like, first generation works really hard.
Sure.
The second generation saw that, and so they kind of work as hard as they can, but a little less. But they saw, and then the third generation didn't see any of the hard work of the first generation and wants to extract all the wealth and use it.
I can tell you from having worked in financial management and wealth management and a trust company, meeting with families with their kids in attendance. Every family's different. Every kid is different.
Yeah,
right. And so you can have two identical, you have the parents raise two kids exactly the same way, but two totally different personalities.
One kid could be different at different ages.
Yes. Yeah. It's so you can't plan that, but you can, all I can tell you is that from what I have seen work and what I've seen be successful is people really taking the time to get their children involved. I think and what I mean by that, get them involved is like, okay, hey, we have this responsibility. This is a family responsibility. You need to be present. You need to be thinking about this. You need to start making decisions, giving them sort of ownership and, a vote, a say, getting them involved. Because the people that don't, that just like, hey, I don't want to tell you anything. I don't want my kids to know how much I have. I don't want the kids to know this or know that. And then they'll just get it. it's a 50-50.
Right,
It's
right.
who is that personality that's receiving this money versus having them being involved in the process for 20, 30 years before you die. And then maybe it becomes evident to Joni and Jody that Joni's better with money. And so Jody goes, I mean, you had the opportunity. We're all there. We're all witnessing it. Like mass transparency, dealing with hard realities. And they're in a family that's just like very honest with what that is, so that you don't get, because I mean, these kids that inherit some of this money where there's so much hatred and resent between the two. Oh, so-and-so has all the control and they're not giving me my money and I know they're screwing me. And that goes beyond the money, right? That started years ago. So I don't know. It's an undertaking. Running your family is like running a business.
Yeah, it is.
Or running a business is like running your family,
Yeah,
one or
like,
the other.
They start off as cost centers before they become profit centers.
Exactly.
It takes a long time.
That's your
it's
goal.
Like R&D.
Yes.
And
exactly right.
G&A expense and HR.
That's the goal. How to turn your kids into a profit center.
You sit down and you're like, okay, we're gonna get lunch for the company today. And if it was just you're like, I'd get a lobster roll, but we got HR here.
Yes.
We're getting pizza today.
Well, that's a good point, because some kids are the HR kids and some kids are the executive committee and other kids are the builders and other kids are the compliance officer. So it's like, what is your kid good at? What's their personality type? Where can you fit them into the family structure so that they add value? And then how can you make have each separate child realize that the other one's providing value they can't provide, so that it becomes like a business as opposed to like, oh, you're always just fucking off and you're always surfing or you're always doing whatever and I do have to do everything for you, and creating all that resentment.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
Yeah, well, it's tough if like one kid like got the skills of a janitor and no dissing janitors, but he wants to be the CEO.
Yes.
That's the egos get involved, with the kids. But that is what it's all about. I do agree. And raising good kids and having a great family, I think predates Bitcoin. It's more important than Bitcoin. I think of like my wife kids as my first Bitcoin, my first lifelong trades. And the most valuable, scarce things I'll ever have in my life. So I think the only things that are scarce and the three most things that are important in your life are your own time, your family, and your Bitcoin.
Yep.
And those are the things you have the most control over. Of hopefully you make choices where you like the outcomes. And that's where I would spend your time and invest the most in.
Great advice. Let's end it on that, my friend.
All right, man. It's been
That's
dope.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.